SpringFest is heating up at Lowe's. And for a limited time, we have the extra big deals you need to impress guests. Get your outdoor space ready and save $50 on a select Cobalt 24-volt blower kit, now $79. Plus, save $80 on a Charbroil Performance 4-burner grill, now $199. It's springtime, and our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/13. While supplies last. Selection varies by location.
And here is the star of the History Channel, Robert Clotworthy. When you watch Ancient Aliens or The Curse of Oak Island Gold or The Curse of Civil War Gold or any cursed supreme metal, the voice behind it is Robert Clotworthy. I have so much respect for Robert because he's at the top of the food chain of voiceover talent, but he makes those shows work. You could not imagine a different voice telling the story, driving the story of Ancient Aliens. Robert Clotworthy, live. Welcome to the big show.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Walter. Really enjoy speaking with you. It's a pleasure.
18, 19 seasons of Ancient Aliens. How many is it?
Well, I was looking it up today. In our nomenclature with the Prometheus, the production company, it's 22. But actually in years, I think it's 18, 19.
The most impressive.
When we first started, they would do like 2 seasons in 1 year. So we're in our 22nd as far as we're concerned. It's been a long time.
And I bet you're not bored.
Not at all. Not at all. It's exciting every time I go into the studio.
And most of those episodes, there are revelations. You must look at the script and go, oh, my gosh, how did they find this out? This is unbelievable. And could you share with us this season 1 or 2 of the revelations that you've read about, that you've come across, that you look at the producers of Ancient Aliens and you go, you found out this? This is amazing. How about one of those 2 examples, Robert?
Here's something that I believe is going to be on a future episode, because I happened to speak to a friend of mine who worked at NASA, was a part of the Apollo program, and she told me a story that was told to her by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. I just happened to have a conversation with her, and I asked her about the astronauts, and she had mentioned that she'd been to many parties with astronauts during the missions, and she'd mentioned Neil Armstrong. I said, wait a minute, you were at Neil Armstrong's house? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, what happened? She goes, well, it was a pool party, so we were there, and she was actually in kind of the jacuzzi with them, and they started talking about their experience on the moon in Apollo 11, that when Neil Armstrong stepped off the lunar module and gave his speech about one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, as he stepped back because Buzz Aldrin was going to come off the LEM, he looked around and he thought he saw something moving on the moon. And when Buzz Aldrin stepped off the LEM, he saw it too. Now, I didn't know this. Apparently they had like a whiteboard that they brought with them with like a crayon. So if they needed to communicate, if for some reason the communications were down, they could talk to one another and write out something. And Buzz was about to say something, and Neil held up aside, don't say anything. He got on the secure channel, which was the flight engineers channel, and he spoke to Chris Kraft, who was, one of the founders of Mission Control. And if you check, there are actually 2-minute gaps in the conversation between the astronauts and Mission Control. And they were describing what they were seeing. And they actually said they saw what looked like, they called them pods, and movement between the pods, and that they were essentially surrounded by these. And that Mission Control told them, ignore it, just continue with the mission. Now, she asked them, she said, wait a minute, are you guys, BSing me? And they said, no, this actually happened. So, and I asked her, I said, well, why do you think that happened? And she goes, well, if you were from another planet and you saw these creatures from Earth about to step foot for the first time on a body in outer space that was not their planet, you'd be interested. You'd be watching them from a distance. And she has a feeling that if we had continued with the moon missions, if we had established a base on the moon, they probably would have announced their presence and said hello. But after Apollo 17, we did not go back until just this week. So we'll see. And based on what I understand about Neil Armstrong, he was not a guy who was a prankster. He wouldn't joke about something like this. In fact, he rarely discussed the mission to the moon. He wouldn't even talk to his own son about it. To think that he was just kind of pulling somebody's leg, I doubt. But that I thought was fascinating. I think we're going to have that on a future episode where she tells that story.
Do you think that Neil Armstrong did not talk about it with his son or anybody because of seeing multiple things like that would have required long explanations that, frankly, he didn't have?
I would agree with you. And even on the mission to the moon, they actually saw a UFO on their way to the moon. That Buzz Aldrin was looking out the window and he said, "Hey, Neil, take a look at this." And they saw an object moving across space. And Neil said, "Oh, I think that's just the booster." And Buzz said, "Wait a minute. Didn't we already see the booster but going in a different direction?" And Neil Armstrong said, "Well, unfortunately, we can't go over there and take a look. We've got a mission to go on." So they had to let it go. But they saw something on their way to the moon as well. I think that Neil Armstrong was pretty shocked by the experience on the moon. And if he did actually see something moving up there watching him, yeah, I can see why he wouldn't want to discuss that.
Buzz has always been problematic for NASA.
Yeah.
Because he is who he is, and he's a brilliant man, but every now and then he says wacky things.
Yeah.
And like he was on the talk show, and they said, "Well, when you went to the moon," and he said, "Well, I didn't go to the moon. You saw an animation." He used to say things like this.
Yeah.
And he must be deeply conflicted between what he saw, what he was told to say, and what he was told he can't say. And then there's the problem of remembering stuff.
Yeah. And, she told me that Buzz was more of a prankster, but Neil Armstrong was the one that was driving the conversation. And she wasn't asking questions. She just sat there and listened to them discussing it and then asked what's going on. And this is a person I find incredibly credible. They've been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, which was, awarded to Charles Lindbergh, has 2 Purple Hearts. This is not a person that is timid and easily fooled. So, admittedly, she was, 25 at the time. These were a couple of astronauts. Maybe they were pulling her leg, but I don't think so.
No one has ever, like you said, no one has ever called Neil Armstrong a jokester. You and I are talking to Robert Clotworthy, who is the voice of Ancient Aliens. He's the voice of the History Channel with The Curse of Oak Island Gold and The Curse of Civil War Gold. Robert Clotworthy. Other revelations that we might be able to explore here about this season?
Well, first, I do want to acknowledge that this week we lost one of our favorite people in Ancient Aliens. Nick Pope passed away, who was a good friend, an incredible contributor to the show, and he will be sorely missed. So I just want to acknowledge that. He was...
By the way, many people also miss him. I got a lot of notes the day he passed away this week, a lot of notes on Facebook, a lot of emails from Midnight Misfits. Yes, Nick Pope, his passing will be missed on the show and by your fans.
Fortunately, we did a lot of filming with Nick, so he's going to be well represented in this new season. So he may be gone, but we're still going to be able to learn from him because he was that kind of a man, and we all miss him.
I'm sorry that you lost your friend.
Yeah. But we will continue asking the questions. We will continue to seek the answers and be the spear the point of the spear in trying to get the information out to everyone.
Yes. Did you hear the conversation we had last week with Congressman Matt Gaetz?
I did.
What did you think about his alien-human hybrid news? It was news that he had.
It's interesting because we touched upon that in one of our shows, but we had a different spin to it. But I think that what he was talking about, I can't doubt him. There's information out there. There's things that are happening that obviously we're not aware of, and in a strange way, it makes sense. If this was an attempt to kind of communicate in a way with these aliens, maybe there's a way that they communicate that's telepathically. You can't do it via a universal translator or something. That this is the way you do it, and the only way to do that is to have some kind of a genetic connection to them. It's kind of spooky, but
well,
I have a feeling he would know. He would know more than I would.
He says that it was a government official who debriefed him and other congressmen, and with that is the premise. You have to look at the premise. Okay, so they're creating alien human hybrids. Now, why would they do that? Oh, because they're saying because they need to be more effective in communicating with aliens, which means to me that there are aliens and that they've had trouble communicating with them, and they're going to go through the trouble of hybriding humans and aliens to enable us to talk to aliens. Oh, that means they're already here. There's brilliant circular reasoning there, Robert.
Yeah, I think that there's a high likelihood that they not only are here, but they are around us. We probably encounter them quite often. We just are not aware of it.
Now, in addition to you, the other celebrity friend I have is William B. Davis. And William B. Davis played Cancer Man on The X-Files. Did you watch
yes, of course.
Yes.
Of course.
All right, so he came to our wedding anniversary, and I got to have that relationship with him. And I said to him, so has anybody from like the CIA ever pulled you aside? He says, Walter, I was pulled aside by somebody in the CIA in Washington, and I was told, you have no idea how close you are. Okay, well, that was from Cancer Man. That's pretty good. Now, has anybody pulled you aside, Robert, and said you have no idea how close you are?
Yeah. It's happened many times from people that are deeply in the know, and they are quietly encouraging us to continue what it is we're doing. And in fact, I just put a phone call into to one of them today, as a matter of fact, because I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into his experiences and his knowledge. But yeah, quite a few people. I've had people say that some of these aliens they believe are actually, for lack of a better word, shapeshifters, that they will appear differently to different people. In other words, one of them could be in front of three of us. You would describe that person one way. I would describe them a different way. Another person would describe them a completely different way. One's male, one's female, one's black, one's white, one's tall, one's short, one's old, one's young.
Right.
You see a completely different thing, even though it's one entity.
And do you feel that government officials are influencing your producers as to what the point of view should be? One of the theories being that the more information the public has about aliens and about UFOs, the more accepting they will be when the truth is revealed.
That's an interesting question. I don't know directly. I have talked to the producers about that, and they get approached by different people quite often, and it's difficult to kind of weed through the all the stuff to find the real true people that are serious, because there's obviously there's a lot of cranks that will contact us.
A lot of cranks.
Yeah. So I'm gonna poke the producers a little bit more on that to see what it is, because I have a feeling that probably in a very subtle way that is true.
Well, that's your homework for next week. I want you to poke those producers, find out what the truth is in terms of their influence from the government. Robert Clotworthy, voice of Ancient Aliens, Curse of Oak Island Old, thank you so much for being a friend of Another Side of Midnight with Walter Sterling on the Red Apple Audio Networks.